And I do want to talk to you about some of the interesting people that we had here. People constantly ask me, how is Naples different than it was when you came? The big change was that Naples had a lot of oddballs. And these really kind of off-the-wall people were so different. And I fit right in. I just loved these really kind of weird people. And these weren't beatniks or kids of the 50s and 60s. They were not beatniks. They were very wealthy people that were odd and that were so interesting. Julius Fleischmann probably had the greatest influence on Naples. He brought a lot of artists to Naples. We still have great art shows, but this was for a small town. He had some really great and well-known. He had parties on his yacht, which was built in Holland. He was a close friend of the King and Queen. And he was a fascinating man. Now, I knew the first mayor of Naples. Speed Menifee came here, can you imagine, after the Spanish-American War. His name was Speed Menifee. He came from two of the greatest families in Kentucky, the Speed family and the Menifee family. And they had high hopes for this baby, named him Speed. He went off to the war, and when he came back to Louisville, Kentucky, it was very apparent that Speed was gay. Well, this was not acceptable to the society of Louisville, Kentucky. They wanted to send him to Siberia, but their second choice was Naples. And he was known as an endowment baby. And we had several of those in Naples. These are people not acceptable to their family's idea of society, and they sent them a regular check in order to stay away. Written on the check was, please don't come home. And so I knew Steve. He had a cottage at 17th Avenue and the beach. And I used to go there. He had a chapel for his grandma, who was a carved coconut head. His little cottage looked like something that had floated out of the sea. He was a regular after storms gathering up furniture that was being thrown away. And I know that he got a considerable amount of money. Now, although he was a little on the gay side, the ladies of Naples forgave that. Anybody that was single, he would escort them. Now, I tried to get a date with him, but he told me I was too old for him. So nothing really worked out with Steve. He was a great storyteller. His greatest story was that he had a Jeep that he would take out into the Everglades. He was out there hunting one day when a rattlesnake struck at the tires. Tires filled the snake up with air, and the snake fell aside dead. And he had lots and lots of good stories. Another wonderful person who was really odd was Jane Tibbett. My God, do any of you remember Lawrence Tibbett, the great opera singer? What are you scratching your head for? Lawrence Tibbett was probably the greatest opera singer we've ever known. And he was married to Jane, who had lots and lots and lots of money. Her family had started the Greyhound line. There were two sections of Naples during that time. The area from Fifth Avenue all the way down to the Beach Club Hotel was called, I'm having a senior moment, was called the Barbary Coast. And that's where Jane built this magnificent house on the beach. And right next door she built a house she called the Taj Mahal, where she had a swimming pool and a sauna and all kinds of stuff to enjoy at frequent parties that she had. She used to drink yellow gin, and so whenever I reciprocated and invited her to my humble house, there was always the yellow gin for her. But every once in a while, Lawrence would come to see her. Now, they were not exactly Blondie and Dagwood. They fought like cats and dogs. In fact, I never saw cats and dogs fight like they did. And he used to bring home all the stuff that was in the opera. And he had the big swords that were in Damaronica. And he chased her down Gulf Shore Boulevard until the police came and intervened. So although we were a tiny little town with one theater, and I'll tell you about that theater, it was excess from the war, had a tin roof. So if you wanted to go to the movies and it was raining, tough. No television, because it made so much noise on this roof, and you get a ticket. And at one time I lived on 13th Avenue, right around the corner from the theater. And I had two dachshunds, and I would wait until the box office closed. I would put the leashes on the dog, and we would go to the movies. And one day, one of my editors came in, and she said, you know, some crazy woman was in the theater last night. She came in with her dogs. Those dogs loved the movie. They were very, very good. Palm Cottage is now a calm and wonderfully peaceful place. Not always. The Browns used to live there, Larry and Alexandra Brown. And if Fitzgerald had ever visited Naples, he would find the perfect pair. They were huge drinkers. They had a 1934 Mercedes convertible. Also, they had two Basenjis. Do you all know what a Basenji is? It's that African hunting dog with the curly tail. They do not bark. They make a peculiar nose. And it was so right that they should have these weird dogs. Now, those dogs used to love my dachshunds. And no leash laws. It was heaven for the dogs. In fact, the dogs would all get together, 5 or 6 of them, and run down on the beach and swim. Anyway, one day Alexandra called me up. She said, the dogs are gone. And I said, I know just where they were. In those not so liberal times, the black people all lived in one quarter. And my dogs used to love, there used to be a place called Sadie's Dance Hall. It was a wonderful place where people used to go and dance. And Ginger and Amber loved that place, and they introduced the Basenjis. So I went down to the dance hall, and there they were. And they jumped in the car, all wet, and I took them home. Well, there was film playing up in Fort Miles at the Arcade Theater, And the Browns had heard that they were about dogs, and the Bazenjis were in them. So they put the 2 dogs in the car, and they go up to Fort Myers, and they buy the tickets. And the ticket taker, "You can't take those dogs in here. Are you crazy?" "Oh, okay." So Alexander goes to the back of the theater, opens the emergency door, and the 4 of them go in, and nobody ever found them. The dogs didn't do anything. So we had such wonderful people. Next door to me was the county judge, Judge Jolly. And he worked down in Everglades but lived up here. And it was so great because every time somebody went out and killed a wild turkey out of season, he would bring it to me. And I learned how to make the most wonderful turkeys. Now, I can see that a lot of you are looking like you want to ask questions. And before please ask me some questions. Don't ask me how old I am, how many times I've been married. I don't want to talk about that. But I will answer your questions about Naples.
About John Slater.
Oh, that's another oddball. John Slater. These people had a lot of money. They could have gone to a psychiatrist. But they really, I would not like it if these people got sane. He lived down on the Gold Coast in a magnificent mansion. What we remember most is he'd been married for many, many years, and he kicked that wife out and brought another woman here who used to go around the grounds, I guess the word is naked. And he had bought her a little, was it a tiger?
Lion.
A what?
Lion.
Oh, it was a little lion. And she would walk that baby lion around while all the workmen were not working, but they were supposed to be. Anyway, this was the big scandal of Naples. And of course we had all kinds of rules and regulations, but they did not apply to the very, very rich. It was the poor people like myself that had to toe the line. Anyway, he imported all kinds of wild beasts. He had deer, he had all kinds of water birds, and they lived on this estate for a very long time. And he got so he would invite the school children to come, and that made it all okay. Now, he was the only man that I ever saw taking drugs in Naples. So he was a really bad boy. And there were lots of bad boys. There was, Billy, who was the guy down in Creighton Cove? Benny Morris. Benny Morris. Oh, how he loved women. He and his wife were separated, and she lived in a lovely cottage way up on Gordon Drive with her boyfriend. And he was one good-looking guy. Meantime, Benny had various and sundry women. The big thing I always knew about Benny was he used to wear those patent leather evening slippers everywhere. He had a house on one of the islands in the Bahamas where he would take his lady friends. Anybody else?
One of his lady friends was a girl that worked for us on the ticket counter.
Okay.
Colette Doucette. But she welcomed all the visiting private pilots. She finally married one.
Well, good for her. He made an honest woman of her.
And Slater was married to that girl from Switzerland. She was very pretty, and he divorced his wife, whom everyone liked. I think she was the sister of Wiley.
Oh, yes, that was John Slater.
Yes, and one time he flew over with Johnny Zate to Miami to pick up a dolphin.
And they brought it back on the plane?
No, it came back by truck. But
Oh, okay.
John said, "What are you going to do now that you're retired?" He said, "I'm just going to enjoy myself with my new wife." And later, she divorced him, went back to her husband. He declared that he was the victim of an international conspiracy. He lost $1 million on her.
See, aren't you sorry you didn't live then? It was so much more interesting. Every single morning, everybody that worked for a newspaper would gather at the Rexall drugstore on the corner of 5th Avenue and A Street. It's an Italian pizza place now. And there we would all discuss who was sleeping with who and whatever was going on in Naples, and we didn't really need a newspaper. Have you all had the lady in green?
Doris, other than yourself, who was probably Naples' most influential woman?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that question. The most influential woman, and if she was here now, she still would be. Her name was Mamie Took, and she and her husband were great investors in the first bank in Naples. Mamie Took was she was my best friend. And how I forgot about her. Forgive me, Mamie. Anyway, her husband had he was the president of the bank, and then he had a serious stroke. And Mamie, who had never graduated from college, she used to work in a bank, became the president. And under her direction, there were so many businesses in Naples that would never have existed had it not been for her. She had her office, her desk, down in the lobby of the bank. And there was absolutely no loan committee. Mamie was the loan committee. And if you went in there and asked for a loan, because the town was so small, she knew all about you. And most of the small businesses would never have existed and progressed and did so much for Naples. Well, it has been wonderful to be with all of you. You laughed, and that's what I want people to do in life, is to laugh, be joyful, and know you live in the best place in the world. Bravo.